High King Varian Rin had been on a journey, but unlike his beloved son, his journey was internal. Varian began what would eventually be called the Hellscream War in the depths of the Undercity, shortly after the Wrathgate over 2 years ago. That Varian fought out of hatred, poisoned by his loathing of the orcs as a people. But while Garrosh slowly descended across the war, Varian began to learn temperance, patience, caution, concern. For Garrosh, the goal was fighting. For Varian, he began to realize what he was fighting for. Varian displayed this many times across Pandaria, from the hills above Ironforge as the Confederacy launched a surprise attack, to the jungles of Krasarang as he outmaneuvered his entrenched foes. This Varian fought with and for honor, something that would make a lasting impression on his son and on his enemies. It is this Varian that opened negotiations with Lorthamar Theron and the Blood Elves, as the Blood Elves increasingly wanted nothing to do with Hellscream's forces. They were not alone. It had been some months, but the forces of both sides had finally mobilized, and both made a beachhead and a battlefield of the Krasarang Wilds. This forced a confrontation between Vol'jin and Garrosh. Vol'jin had never liked the young war chief, and had already begun making moves against him, even relocating the entirety of the troll people of Orgrimmar out to the Echo Isles. This immediately led to one of Garrosh's stoolies attempting to assassinate Vol'jin, stabbing him directly through the throat. The heroes promptly obliterated the would-be assassin, but Vol'jin had to go into hiding, aided by Chen Stormstout in his recovery. Between these two events, the Alliance found themselves with new allies against Hellscream. The Horde. While not true allies nor friends, this was the first hint of the Horde Alliance force we've seen since the early days of Northrend. Varian had been guiding and crafting the Alliance to be a better organization, one devoted to principles and the certainty of morality, a singular path of right and wrong which must be preserved at all costs, even at sacrifice or loss. By contrast, what Hellscream had done was in direct defiance of the core identity of the Horde. Remember, the Horde was originally founded by outcasts of common circumstance, orc refugees, Darkspear exiles, and Tauren survivors. They practiced practical, decisive action, remaining flexible in their thinking, always evaluating for the greater good. This bond of blood forged something they all desperately needed: a family. That is the Horde. Hellscream, by contrast, practiced war crimes as regular course, fought for the sake of fighting, and believed in racial supremacy. Hellscream sought mountains of skulls and rivers of blood. Whatever proclamations to the contrary, what Hellscream crafted was an abomination, made all the worse by the lack of external influence. Unlike so many before him, Garrosh was not mind-controlled or possessed by the Shah or influenced by Fel or corrupted by the Void. No, Garrosh was who he was, all on his own, as were the many who followed him. In this shifting tide did both forces discover the Divine Bell. The bell was a Mogu artifact from Lei Shen's time, likely crafted from material harvested directly from Ra. It deliberately evoked negative emotions in those who heard it, summoning forth the Shah to empower and inhibit those present. The Alliance managed to secure the bell first and secret it away, with Jaina Proudmoore personally ensuring its safety against any incursion outside of the Kirin Tor. Thanks to some politicking, the Sunreavers of the Kirin Tor ended up assisting Hellscream agents in securing the bell. Jaina was not overly pleased about this, which led to the Purge of Dalaran. All Blood Elves and Horde-aligned races were killed, imprisoned, or expelled from Dalaran under her command. This did not help anything, really. All negotiations with Lorthamar abruptly ceased, and any forces still loyal to Garrosh other than his die-hard orcs promptly turned on him. Garrosh believed this not only acceptable, but desirable, as such lesser races were no longer a part of his plans as anything other than targets. And to top it all off, Anduin had not been idle during these events, but had uncovered the harmonic mallet and used it to destroy the bell. Garrosh nearly killed Anduin for the effort, but he was saved. So, to recap, Garrosh has alienated everyone except his most zealous of followers, made an enemy of every major organization on the planet, and did it all for an artifact he failed to use and lost minutes later anyways. Garrosh Hellscream, ladies and gentlemen. Anduin spent some time recovering with a pseudo-friend of his, someone at least one of the heroes recognized. Raytheon. Truthfully, Raytheon has been busy this entire time. With the wealth of resources garnered from the slaughtered Black Dragonflight at his disposal, Raytheon put into motion plans to empower and imbue heroes as his personal champions, as well as to tilt and sway the war effort this way and that. His influence has been a constant background nudge as events proceed. If one wonders why, well, Raytheon was in a similar position to one Illidan Stormrage. He actually understood the scale and the scope of the threat the Burning Legion posed, and he, like others, recognized the truly unique opportunity Azeroth presented as the one world to stand against the Legion, more than once even. Thus, all he did, all he pushed, was in pursuit of molding and forging Azeroth into a force that could withstand the Legion when they came. And they were coming. Raytheon assisted heroes, helped Anduin, and supported the Alliance. It was his belief the Alliance should occupy and dominate the Horde after Hellscream's fall, to provide a unified front in the face of the Legion. Thus did Raytheon throw weight into backing not only the Darkspear Rebellion, but the Siege of Orgrimmar. As soldiers and supplies, ships, and artillery were mustered by Orgrimmar, Garrosh had done the unthinkable. He had, at length, managed to find and excavate the heart of Y'Shaarj. This still-beating heart was all that remained of the old god, and while it lacked sentience or purpose, it still seeped void and Shaw energies incessantly. Garrosh sought to bathe the heart in the pools of the Vale, was nearly stopped by Taranzul, but Garrosh won that encounter, severely wounding the Elder Pandaren and plunging the object into the Titan-blessed waters. The Vale was corrupted with Shaw energy in the process, and Garrosh took the heart with him to Orgrimmar. The heroes, hot on Garrosh's trail, could not simply leave the Vale to its own devices. The very Titan-blessed waters themselves morphed and mutated into Immersius, but with heroic aid the creature was purified, the first step in restoration. The fallen protectors were once allies of the heroes, members of the Shadowpan and the Golden Lotus, utterly consumed by the potent Shaw energies seeping nearby. Thankfully, there was a Watcher present, one of the only Watchers on Pandaria, Narushen. If one has paid attention in past histories, one has probably noticed that Titan technology was quite skilled at removing void corruption. This is likely the very reason why the Void Lords feared the Titans so. Narushen was able to contain the corruption nearby, but also insisted that the heroes themselves were infected. With Narushen's aid, they were purged of the vestiges of the final 7th Shah, the Shah of Pride. Pride was unique amongst the 7, for it was never chained and it never slept. When Shao Hao purged and imprisoned the Primes, Pride was allowed to endure, and Pride has spent 10,000 years infiltrating the land, influencing wherever it could. When the heroes first journeyed to Pandaria, with their great accomplishments and power at their back, it found easy purchase within. But as with other Prime Shah, it was not the emotion itself that was truly the problem. Rather, it was the focus. Pride for its own sake, accomplishing only to venerate yourself? They were great adventurers, champions, heroes. They had proven so countless times before, but they knew what they fought for, and it was not their own vanity. Resolute and unrestrained, pride was obliterated. Truly, finally, the last of the Shah was gone. With this, the Vale would be able to recover, and Pandaria was secured. It was time to deal with Hellscream. All the forces of the world were united against Hellscream, but Orgrimmar was one of the most defensible fortifications on the planet, and this was all part of Garrosh's strategy, if it could be called as such. He wished to fight his foes on superior terms, break them here, and then sally out with his newly recruited horrors and ravage all he beheld, mountains of skulls, rivers of blood. The first obstacle was Warlord Zaela, Garrosh's chief advisor and leader of his loyalist Dragonmaw clan, who rode atop a mighty proto-drake and commanded his outermost defenses against naval invasion. The drake was slain, though Zaela escaped the battle. Beyond was the Iron Juggernaut, This is a mechanical terror, capable of astonishing amounts of devastation in short order. Thankfully, the tank was designed more for fighting armies or siege works than mobile individuals, and the heroes were able to dismantle it. Beyond was a horrifying sight. Captured humans, trolls, used as slaves or target practice, butchered and broken for sport. G. Firepaw was beaten near to death in open streets, while non-loyalist orcs were hung or brutalized. Eitrig was present, having already assisted Thrall and Varrock in their incursion. He was grievously injured for his troubles. The two holding court over Orgrimmar proper were Earthbreaker Haram and Wavebinder Cardis. Dark Shaman. We've discussed the Dark Shaman and their twisted ways before, and Garrosh had given them clemency in exchange for servitude. Beyond were civilians, orphans, innocents, all victims of Garrosh's policies. The winding path of the Ragefire Chasm led down into the Underhold, and at its gates was General Nazgrim. When we first spoke of Nazgrim during the Calamity of Vashir, it was mentioned that he was a hardline loyalist to the throne, whoever sat upon it. He had no desire to fight the heroes he had bled and fought alongside so many times, but his loyalty forced his hand. Nazgrim died, hoping the next generation of Horde would be able to at last know prosperity, freed from the guilt of Thrall or the hatred of Garrosh. Within the Underhold, only the zealous remained. These were not orcs of conflicted loyalty, or those press-ganged into service. These were those who truly believed in Garrosh's vision. Nowhere was this more exemplified than Malkorok, Blackrock Orc, formerly of the Dark Horde. Malkorok blindly volunteered to be infused with the power of the heart, and the monstrosity he now was to his eyes a delight. Garrosh was a marauder at heart, pillaging every land he touched. He had taken many various monsters and beasts to tame and control, including the Zandalare siege Devilsar Thok the Bloodthirsty, and he had many spoils of Pandaria under his care, guarded over by a goblin titan defense system. This is as good a time as any to mention Siegecrafter Blackfuse, as he is critically important for events to come. Blackfuse was a genius, even by goblin standards, and Garrosh quickly tapped him as his chief crafter and constructor, pouring plundered riches down the goblin's metaphorical throat. In return, Blackfuse not only built some of the most terrifying and dangerous devices thus far known to Azeroth, including the earlier Iron Juggernaut as well as the Goblin Titan defense system, but his greatest invention is a contraption known as the Iron Star. The Iron Stars deployed in Orgrimmar are actually prototypes to what would be later developed, but it cannot be overstated how powerful and devastating these devices are. The Iron Star could serve as a straight-up bomb or a delivery system, but they also provided tremendous power, serving as engines and cores for all manner of mechanical monstrosities. Whoever held this held a key technological edge over most other forces. The Siegecrafter himself was felled by the superior power and skill of the heroes, which left only the final defenders of the wayward warchief, the paragons of the Claxi. Loyal, as ever, to their old god masters, they followed the heart and defended it with their lives. With their fall, the Mantid would be functionally removed from the board for good, having already assisted the very heroes that slew them in destroying the greater bulk of their own society. At the end was Garrosh Hellscream. Empowered by the heart of Yasharaj, emboldened by his dreams of endless war, Garrosh was no match for the heroes. But he fought with troops and Iron Stars, Shah and the heart itself. In the end, he was mutated into a nightmare creature as he absorbed the heart directly, ironically ensuring the final vestige of Yasharaj would be erased. But in the end, Garrosh could not stand, so he fell. The Hellscream War was over. Garrosh survived his defeat, chained and dragged by the Pandaren to face trial by the August Celestials for his crimes. Varian, recognizing distinction between Hellscream and Horde, opened negotiations with their new warchief, Vol'jin. Conflict would immediately cease. Trade and cooperation would slowly build up in its place. Raytheon was furious. The very idea of a coordinated force of different people, of infinite diversity in infinite combinations, was completely alien to him. He sought one singular, uniform power, and Raytheon was willing to do anything to find this solution, no matter how stupid it might be.